God is hiding in your body. Your body is designed to experience divine consciousness. But here's the problem. We've been programmed to believe otherwise. We have been programmed to think that God is separate from ourselves. God is out there somewhere, up in the sky, up in the heavens, in a building, in a book, in a doctrine. But no one ever tells us that God is within our cells. God is within our pineal gland. We're never told that. No, we're told to search and seek and obey and follow this and recite this, and then maybe you'll get to meet God someday when you go to heaven, right? That's what many of us are told or conditioned with when we're either born into or persuaded into these different religious institutions, right? But when you start to question all of that, and this is really where the path begins, with you questioning everything, starting with, who am I? Questioning that, what you've been told about yourself. Start with some self-inquiry. And then you start to question, all these different teachings and creeds and doctrines and traditions that have been handed to you. And this is one of the healthiest things you can do, because when you start to think critically and independently, and you realize the importance of direct experience over belief, this is when you start to transcend the matrix. This is when you start to experience this expansion of consciousness. See? So, yeah, it's so important to embrace the curiosity. Being curious and letting go of the certitude is what will cause you to evolve and grow the most in this human experience. So if you're a part of a system or a group or whatever that's frowning upon questions or being curious, that's a red flag. If that starts to happen, you should step back and you should say, why? Question everything. And the more you question, the more you'll transcend. And like I said, there has to be that healthy combination of honesty and curiosity. So when I started doing this, and I started letting go of all these different things that I was programmed with for years, I noticed that when I became harmonized and in alignment with nature and the sun, and I started to really focus on three main things: light, water, and magnetism, which is really the essence, the main focus in quantum biology. What I noticed was, and all of these things were me trying different things. So again, direct experience. But what I noticed was, when I started to apply these things, and like I said, focus on these things, there was a change that happened within me. I felt more alive. I felt this vibrational frequency increase, and I felt the expansion of consciousness that I'm talking about. And I could experience this activation of intuition, this inner knowing that goes beyond the intellectual, analytical mind. And this was something that I had never really experienced before. So it was truly mind-boggling. But I knew that whatever it was I was experiencing for myself directly was something immensely profound. And I'm like, yeah, this is something I'm going to keep sticking with, because it is producing the most amount of transformation in my life that I've ever experienced. So what do I mean by all of this? Well, for me, the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, has nothing to do with a creed or a religion or some kind of theological framework. No, for me right now, the Trinity has everything to do with what I just said: light, water, magnetism. Why? Because when I started to prioritize these three things, and I started to see that my body is not separate from the earth, my body is the earth, and that it's way more complex and interesting and mystical than what I've been told. And I started putting two and two together. I started doing the math. I started to learn about energy and vibration and frequency, which, by the way, that's something that Nikola Tesla said. He said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So I started to incorporate all of that in my journey of questioning everything and being open-minded and curious. And what it led me to was returning back to the basics of being, living simpler, and getting back into nature, because this is something that I think most of us already know, right? We know that when you're in nature, when you're outside, you feel different, especially when you're in the sun. You can be having a horrible day, you can be full of anxiety and depression and these low-level emotions, but then you step outside, you get in the sun, maybe you're grounding so your feet are touching the earth. When this happens, especially when you're at the beach, there is a very real energetic shift that's occurring within you. And you can't really explain it, and maybe the mind is trying to figure out why this is, and why just a few minutes ago you were feeling all depressed and anxious and just out of alignment, and now all of a sudden you're outside, you're earthing, you're touching the earth, you're absorbing those electrons, you're in the sun, or maybe you're swimming, you're in water. Now all of a sudden you just feel something happening, you feel a shift. Well, I took that and I said, yeah, there's got to be something to this, because I do feel it. I feel more open, and the clarity is there, and I feel more intuitive, and I was starting to have these, what I would call, mini mystical experiences when I would be in nature, when I would be meditating in nature, as opposed to when I would be meditating inside or around all of this artificial light. Yeah, that's something that I'll talk about for a second. So when I was meditating, when I first started meditating, the majority of my meditations were inside. And like I said, around a lot of this artificial light, or surrounded by a lot of non-native EMF. And what I noticed was it would take me a really long time to actually move past the beta brainwave state into the alpha brainwave state, which is when you start to feel more relaxed, and it's when you start to enter into that deep meditation. So it would take me a while, a really long time, if I even got to that level, that experience, when I would be meditating inside, because my mind was just so distracted and so all over the place and overstimulated, and I couldn't focus. I couldn't actually sink into my heart space and, like I said, experience that alpha brainwave state or that theta brainwave state that would then lead into some kind of profound experience of transcendence or oneness or whatever. But then I started connecting with nature. I started to really understand the Holy Trinity, light, water, magnetism, and I started meditating outside. And a lot of this looked like walking meditation. So I was incorporating movement into my whole meditation practice while I'm outside, while I'm in the sun. And what I noticed was when I would do this, it would take just a few minutes for me to transcend my busy analytical thinking mind. My thoughts would slow down, I would become more present, I would become more relaxed, and I would feel this flow, this harmony, this divine river, it seemed like, that was literally, it felt like it was coming from my heart, this river of energy and love and peace and gratitude and joy. And that would carry me along the meditation, and that would actually bring me into these deeper states of meditation. And that really amazed me, because I was like, wait, I don't have to try to get into these deeper states of meditation. No, there's actually a very profound divine pull And as I let go, as I surrender, as I trust this pull, it literally brings me into deeper states of meditation, you see? So that's what was happening. So as I continued my spiritual journey and learning this and tasting this directly for myself, the connection with nature and my spiritual practice and meditation and what it was causing me to experience, I said, yeah, I need to keep on this route. I need to keep pressing into this. I need to keep exploring from direct experience, from this level, from this aspect of quantum biology, light, water, magnetism. Then I started waking up with sunrise because I started to see the importance. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, wait, if I'm going to connect with nature, if I'm going to return to the basics of being and really see the interconnectedness in all of this, but especially in spirituality and in science, in nature, I have to start focusing more on circadian biology, right? Circadian rhythm, because that's everything when you really think about it. Everything is operating in nature and functioning according to these different rhythms and cycles. And it all has to do with light and darkness, these light and dark cycles, circadian rhythm. So then, this is when I started waking up before the sun would rise, and I would start my day with going outside before, and this is really important, before I would touch my phone or look at emails or go on social media, before I would expose myself to that artificial blue light, I would go outside and I would watch the sunrise. And, a lot of times I couldn't see, depending on where I was, I couldn't actually see the sun rising that well, but it didn't matter. Because as long as you're outside during the sunrise and you're absorbing that AM morning sunlight, that light is actually going through your eyes and it's going into your brain. And it is causing the pineal gland, which some call the third eye or the first eye, to function properly. And this is something else because, again, I knew, especially starting this spiritual journey and getting into meditation and learning about the different Eastern traditions, I knew there was something mystically profound about the pineal gland, the third eye. But I didn't really know exactly what was happening, and I didn't know much of the science behind it. I knew these different sages and yogis were talking about how they could do something in their spiritual practice and their meditation to really activate it. And when it's fully activated, it would cause these profound mystical experiences in their meditation, in their spiritual practice. Some would refer to it as like a divine antenna. So I knew there was something to it. Like I said, I knew there was some like woo-woo stuff around it, some stuff I was skeptical about. But when I started to study circadian biology and I started to understand the importance of AM morning sunlight for humans, it all started to make sense because I learned that the pineal gland is responsible for producing melatonin. And melatonin is something else that I know many of us are familiar with. And typically when we think of melatonin, we think of, sleep and naturally, melatonin is supposed to be produced at night, in the evening. And what happens is, when there's a disruption, when there's a disconnection in our circadian biology, and what does this look like? Well, it looks like you being out of alignment with the circadian rhythm. So what does that mean? Well, it means that maybe at night when the sun is going down and it's dark outside, you're around all of this artificial blue light, which isn't natural. And because you're exposed to all this light, that is signaling to the pineal gland that it's not time to go to sleep. It's not dark outside. So that prevents the natural production, or it limits the natural production of the melatonin, which, by the way, melatonin, like I was saying earlier, it's something that many of us are familiar with, but there's actually a lot that we don't know about it. And I have a feeling, and I might be wrong on this, but I have a feeling that it has a lot to do with the mystical stuff and with these higher states of consciousness and with maybe different visions and intuition. Maybe I'm wrong, like I said, but I feel like there's something to that hormone. And it could be some kind of precursor to, like I said, deeper states of consciousness, which it is. I know that when melatonin starts to be produced, it's preparing you for what you're about to experience when you sleep in those deeper states of consciousness, or when the brain waves start to slow down. But even with that, that's something else that I think we still don't really know too much about. And that's what's happening within our consciousness when we're in these, when we're sleeping, when we're experiencing these deep dream states, and we're having these crazy, vivid, very realistic dreams, and maybe there's messages that we're receiving in the dream, or we're encountering beings, or they're full of different symbols and archetypes. Like Carl Jung had a lot to say about dreams and the collective unconscious, so I highly recommend the works of Carl Jung. But anyway, so that's there. You want to talk about curiosity and questioning the hell out of everything and being open-minded? That's how I am right now. I'm super interested in dreams and those different states of consciousness that occur, and the different brainwave states when we are sleeping, and what's actually happening. Because there's a lot of theories out there, but that's something I've been really trying to focus in on. The other thing I've noticed is the more I meditate, when I'm consistently meditating and I'm being very diligent with the practice, and I'm noticing more present moment awareness, and I'm able to sit back into the witness throughout the day because I'm meditating so much, that awareness and being able to rest in the witness sometimes carries over into my dream life. And this can look like lucid dreams. It can also look like being aware, being in the witness during like delta, when you're in the delta brainwave state. And I've had sleep paralysis a lot, where my body is I'm sleeping, but I'm awake, I'm aware, I'm witnessing. So there's, like I said, there's a lot of different ideas and theories as to why that is, and just around all of the dream stuff. But I don't want to spend too much time talking about that today. Maybe I'll talk about that in some other videos. And if you have any questions, you can leave questions about that in the comment section, and I will try my best to answer those questions. But anyway, going back to circadian biology. So melatonin is naturally produced at night, and it's preparing you for sleep. But when that's off, and why would it be off? Well, like I said, there's this exposure to artificial blue light in the evenings, at night, and that will do it. But also, if you're not waking up with the sunrise, if you're waking up a lot later, you see the whole circadian cycle, the rhythm, it all starts in the morning. It starts with that exposure to natural sunlight first thing when you wake up. And it doesn't have to be for that long. It can be for 10 minutes, 15 minutes. But when you make that your first, when you look at the sun, or you're exposed to AM sunlight before you touch your phone, and you're exposed to the artificial blue light, you would be surprised at just how much that alone does for you. It's amazing. And then you become addicted. You become addicted to natural light. You become addicted to the sunlight instead of to blue light, because that's the thing. The blue light is very addicting. And we get these dopamine hits every time we check our phones, every time we check social media, but it's actually coming from the blue light. That's where the addiction is really coming from. But the reason we're going to this so much is because we're experiencing low dopamine because we're not in the sun and we're not addicted to the right thing, which is natural sunlight, which causes us to have these natural, high, consistent dopamine levels. See? So this is why it's so important. And this is why pineal gland, the function of the pineal gland, is all dependent on the light and dark cycles, the circadian rhythm. So when this starts to become a natural practice of yours, and you're watching the sunrise, and you're grounding, if you can ground while you watch the sunrise, that's even better, because you're connected, you're absorbing the electrons from the earth, a lot's happening, and everything is starting to function properly. And then you start to notice the importance of water, right? And you stop drinking the tap water, which, by the way, a lot of the tap water has that fluoride in it, which fluoride, guess what fluoride does? It literally calcifies your pineal gland. Interesting. Yeah, think about that. Question that. But when you start drinking natural spring water or structured water, and you notice that, okay, maybe this is the missing piece in the equation. Maybe I've been spending so much time with light and magnetism, but then you see, well, wait, there's also water. Water is essential for, the human body is like 70% water. So all these things start to work in harmony when there's equal balance and attention in these three different elements, light, water, magnetism. They all work together. You can't just have one without the other two. It doesn't work that way. So when all of this became my main focus, and I actually took a break from the deep philosophical, theological, spiritual stuff, and I started to prioritize what I'm talking about in this video. That is when my spiritual life started to elevate. Like I said, that's when I started to meditate, and I was experiencing these deeper states of meditation very quickly within the meditation, and it was coming very naturally and effortlessly. And this is when I started to experience intuition. Why? Because when I was aligning myself with the natural circadian rhythm and I was prioritizing light, water, and magnetism, now my pineal gland is functioning properly. And like the ancient mystics have been saying for thousands of years, the pineal gland is key. It's the third eye, or as some say, it's the first eye. And when this is functioning properly, it is a divine antenna, and you can access this sixth sense that the five senses can't access, which is this intuitive sense. And the mystical experiences start to increase, and your consciousness starts to expand, and you just know these things on this deeply intuitive level that your mind can't understand, your mind can't figure out. See, for me, learning on my journey has not come solely from reading tons of books. Yes, I've read many books and I've spent a lot of time studying, but honestly, within this past year and a half, I haven't read that many books. Maybe 4 or 5, if that, in this past year. But what I have been doing is I've been spending more time out here in nature. I've been, again, prioritizing the Holy Trinity, light, water, magnetism. And I've been meditating more, and I've been embracing the stillness and the silence. And from this, I actually feel like I've been receiving and remembering more things, more knowledge, more wisdom than what I was getting out of all the years of study and reading all these different books. And again, there's a time and place for that. There's a healthy balance, so I'm not against reading books. I still love to read, and I'm reading a book right now. But I don't spend as much time. That's what I'm saying. There's not an imbalance. There's now a balance. But what I am saying is I know more. I receive more intuitive insight and wisdom when I'm receiving it from the earth instead of from a doctrine or a theology or a philosophy or a book or something within a book that I just mentioned. So why? Because this is what we were designed for. We were literally, our bodies were designed to tap into this divine energy, to experience this expansion of consciousness while we remain in the body. And but the thing about this is we're experiencing this expansion of consciousness while we remain in the body, but when the consciousness expands, we start to know and see that we are so much more than our bodies. We start to drift into unity consciousness. And from there we see, like I was saying earlier, we are not separate from the earth. We are the earth. See? We are the earth. So the physical body, we see that it's totally dependent on the earth and light and water and magnetism. So that's what the expansion is all about. And that's where the harmony comes in. And you start to become the light of the world, because this is the other thing I forgot to mention with light. When your light environment is optimal and you're waking up with the sun, you're watching the sunrise, exposing yourself to AM morning light, and you're staying away from the artificial blue light at night, when all of this is happening and your circadian biology is functioning properly and your pineal gland is activated, your cells actually produce light of their own that is actually stronger than the sun. And this is where it gets mystical. This is where it gets really divine. But at the same time, I mean, this is quantum biology, so it's science. Your cells are producing light. So when the ancients would talk about being beings of light or being the light of the world, they were actually speaking quite literally. See? So God is light. You are the light of the world. I am the light of the world. This is like literal stuff. And it's so transformative because there's just so much happening. But again, you transcend all of these different things that have been limiting us from this higher knowledge, from this expansion of consciousness, from the expression and liberation of really knowing who we are, the true self. Because when you know who you really are as the light of the world, as a divine being, that's when everything changes. But again, this self-realization comes through the combination of, yes, meditation, yes, the spiritual practices and techniques, yes, those things are important, but when they're paired with Gaia, Mother Earth, and they're paired with the Holy Trinity, light, water, magnetism, that's when you experience really the pinnacle of awakening. So, yeah, and again, it's actually, maybe you're hearing everything I'm saying and you're thinking, all of this is super complicated. It's not. It's really not. It's not complicated to wake up with the sun. It's not complicated to start to limit or avoid the artificial blue light at night. It's not. And it's not complicated to start meditating and to sit. And the mind will try to convince you that all these things are too complicated and you can't do this and you can't do that, but that's just the mind. But here's the truth. You are not your mind. You are what's aware of your mind. See? You're the awareness that's behind all these different thoughts and feelings and stuff from the past and the programming and the conditioning that, again, keeps you from knowing who you really are. And if you look around within this matrix, what you'll find, just like I said, with all these different things, like the fluoride, like there's all these things, the artificial blue light, the addiction that comes with that, and what it does to your pineal gland, which is your direct portal to God. What you'll notice is that you're living in a matrix that's literally designed to keep you from experiencing everything that I'm sharing today in this video. See? So when you question the matrix, when you question the different systems and institutions and the things they're telling you to believe, this is the key. I'll share this with you. This is one of the keys to transcending really any kind of matrix. Okay? Most of these different systems are running off of belief, getting the people to believe in certain things. And as long as you're believing in certain things, you're empowering the different systems and the different programming that they're putting out. But when you shift from belief into direct knowing, that is when you transcend these different systems and you start to experience the truth for yourself. And that's when you start to return to nature and you start to understand what I'm conveying in this video. You see, but it becomes this inner journey, this personal journey, and it all starts to unfold from that approach. And that's the main difference. But as long as you're believing in things, blind faith, and you'll notice that, and that's another thing that happens when you awaken and you experience that expansion of consciousness I was talking about, you start to pick up on pattern recognition. And you see these different paradigms throughout history and how they tend to repeat themselves in different ways. And so you see that, okay, this whole thing about belief and just accepting what the experts are saying and what the different leaders and the teachers are saying based upon just blind faith, that's a pattern. I see that for what it is. But as soon as I start to question what they're telling me, all of a sudden I get judged and condemned and I get called a heretic or I get labeled this or that, and notice those patterns. You'll start to pick up on that the more you transcend the matrix that you're in. And these things become so apparent, and again, once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you know, you can't unknow. But that's just the way it works. So when this happens and you start to shift into knowing, then it's like, well then why would I believe in all these different things, especially when it comes to spiritual stuff and God? And no, it's not a matter of belief, it's a matter of directly experiencing it. It's a matter of knowing it. It's a matter of experiential knowledge instead of intellectual knowledge. And that's what they don't want you to know. You can directly experience the divine for yourself because the divine is within your cells. You are the light of the world. And this is what so many of the different mystics and sages have been saying for thousands of years. This is also why many of the different mystics were heavily persecuted by the different systems, by the church, by the different institutions that have been in power, that have been trying to control the people through these different fear tactics and getting them to believe in things. And then, yeah, that's how it all works. See? But you can know for yourself. You can know thyself This is the path of the mystic. This is the path of liberation and transformation and authenticity. And it's within you. It's always been within you. All these different sayings and metaphors that we have, they're pointing to what I'm saying in this video. So, again, this doesn't have to be something that's super complicated. It's not complicated. Return to the basics. Start meditating. Start to ask yourself these big questions that no one else is asking. So just become a curious person. Start to question everything, even what I'm saying in this video. Don't just take it because I said it. No, do your own research. Spend time in nature. Activate the pineal gland. Access that deep intuition that goes beyond the finite analytical mind that can be programmed. Your intuition, that inner knowing, can't be programmed. Your mind can be programmed, the finite analytical mind can be programmed, but your intuitive knowledge, your intuitive heart cannot be programmed. So keep that in mind. When you start to access that higher state of consciousness and you experience that expansion of consciousness, and the intuition starts to flow and the creativity starts to flow, and that harmony, that divine flow that I was talking about in general starts to really carry you. The muse, that is when you go from being limited to limitless. See? But it's simple, it really is. Meditation, question the hell out of everything, focus on direct experience, focus on the Holy Trinity, light, water, magnetism, go outside more, spend some time sitting under a tree, learn from the tree. The tree has something to teach you. The tree will teach you more about yourself and the divine, which are fundamentally one, more than really anything else, because, yeah, you can sit underneath a tree and absorb the electrons and tune into the Schumann resonance, the frequency of 7.83 hertz in the alpha brainwave state. And you can unlock some pretty profound mysteries and truths that have been hidden within you. It's these little things, really simple things that go a long way, but grounding, watching the sunrise, getting your circadian rhythm and alignment, embracing the darkness at night, going to sleep early, allowing your pineal gland to be activated and producing that melatonin naturally at night so that you can sleep well and you wake up feeling restored and rejuvenated. And maybe you had these deep dreams, or maybe you had lucid dreams and you were learning in the dreams, and that's part of your growth and evolution. So all these things start to really complement one another, and they're all interconnected. But again, I can't stress this enough. It's so simple. It's so simple. It's too simple, and they don't want you to know this stuff. So pick up on that. Pattern recognition, stick to the basics of being, and you'll be fine. And you'll start to experience a life of harmony and peace and love and joy and authenticity that maybe you never imagined was possible. But it is possible because the kingdom of God, the kingdom of heaven is within you. So, yeah, I think that's it for today. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. And if you have any questions or comments about any of this stuff, please leave all of that in the comment section below. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.